There is this very specific rhythm to modern travel that I think we all just sort of accept now.
Oh, absolutely. The rushing, the waiting.
Right, yeah, you're rushing through the terminal, you're constantly checking your watch, you're desperately looking for a place to charge your phone. And if you fly through Chicago, you see this one thing everywhere.
You're talking about the letters.
Yes, it's stamped on your luggage tag. ORD, it's on the highway signs, it's painted on the walls. O'Hare.
I mean, it is one of the busiest airports on the planet. Something like 80 million passengers pass through there in a typical year. It's essentially a city within a city.
Exactly. And I would bet that 99% of those 80 million people never really stop to think about the name. It's just a word to them. I'm flying into O'Hare. But if you do happen to ask someone, hey, who is this O'Hare guy? They usually have a vague idea. They'll say, oh, it's named after a war hero.
And, well, they wouldn't be wrong. The airport is named after Edward Butch O'Hare. He was a naval aviator who won the Medal of Honor in World War II. A completely legitimate, bona fide hero.
Right, but here is the twist for today's deep dive. That is not why we are here.
Yes.
Because behind that war hero, there is a much darker, honestly much more complicated story. We are diving into a biographical overview today, not of Butch, but of the man who made him. We're talking about his father, Edward J. O'Hare.
Also known in the history books by a very different name, Easy Eddie.
Easy Eddie. I mean, the name alone sounds like a character straight out of a noir film.
It really does.
And looking at the source material you've pulled together for this deep dive, his life really was a noir film. We are talking about a guy who lived a double life in the truest sense of the word.
It's the absolute definition of a double life. Because on the surface, he's this high-flying, very wealthy lawyer. He's making an absolute fortune in the greyhound racing business. He's a pillar of his community in St. Louis and later in Chicago. Right, but just below that surface, he is the attorney and a key business partner for arguably the most famous gangster in American history, Al Capone.
And that is the hook for me. That is the mission of our deep dive today. How do you go from being a lawyer for the Chicago mob to being the secret undercover informant who helps bring the entire outfit down? Because that is where the story goes. He helps the feds destroy Capone's empire.
And he pays the ultimate price for doing it.
So we have a lot to unpack here for you today. We've got the mob, we've got mechanical rabbits.
The rabbits are the best part.
They really are. It's my favorite detail. And we have this deeply tragic father-son dynamic. But let's rewind a bit. Before the giant international airport, before the mob hits, who was Edward J. O'Hare?
So his story starts a bit south of Chicago. He was born in St. Louis in 1893, and it's a fairly classic American origin story for that time. He had first-generation Irish-American parents, and by all accounts in the sources, he was just incredibly ambitious from day one. He passes the Missouri bar exam in 1923 and immediately joins a law firm.
Okay, so that's a standard lawyer track so far. He's grinding, he's passing the bar. But this is where I got completely stuck in the notes. Because usually when you hear the phrase mob lawyer, you assume the money came from bootlegging or protection rackets right out of the gate. But Eddie's first fortune actually comes from a rabbit.
A mechanical rabbit, yes.
Please explain this to me because it sounds absolutely ridiculous.
It does sound funny to us now, but you have to put yourself back in the context of the 1920s. This was basically high-tech stuff back then. O'Hare represented an inventor named Owen P. Smith. And Smith was the High Commissioner of the International Greyhound Racing Association.
Wow, that is a very lofty title.
It is. And Smith held the patent on the mechanical rabbit. The little lure that zips around the track that the dogs chase.
Wait, so before this invention, did they just use a real rabbit?
Often, yes. Or the racing was just much more chaotic and harder to organize. The mechanical lure completely revolutionized the sport. It made greyhound racing a massive scalable industry. You could suddenly run races on a strict schedule, night after night, without fail. And because O'Hare represented the inventor, when Smith died, O'Hare ended up representing the administratrix of the estate.
Which means he essentially controlled the patent.
Correct. He controlled the rights to the core technology that made the entire sport possible. This gave him a massive foothold in the industry. So by 1925, O'Hare isn't just a lawyer anymore. He is actively operating dog tracks in Chicago, Boston, and Miami.
And we aren't talking about just paying the bills money here. We are talking about serious wealth.
Oh, absolutely. The biographical overview paints a very vivid picture of the O'Hare lifestyle in St. Louis before they made the full move to Chicago. They lived in the Holly Hills neighborhood. They had a brand new house. And get this, the house featured a swimming pool and a private skating rink.
A private skating rink in the 1920s.
Yeah.
That is a level of wealth that is just hard to comprehend for that era.
It was a life of extreme privilege. To escape the St. Louis humidity in the summers, they spent their time at these sprawling river camps on the Merrimack and Gasconade rivers. They had servants, luxury cars, the whole works. He was living the American dream, turbocharged.
But here's the thing that strikes me about his personality. You see this guy with the skating rink and the country clubs, and you think, okay, he is spoiling his family, he's the fun, rich dad. But the notes on his parenting style suggest something totally different. He wasn't just writing checks and ignoring his kids.
No, not at all. And this is crucial to understanding the future war hero, Butch. EJ was absolutely obsessed with discipline. There is this famous anecdote in the sources about his relationship with his son, Butch. It is often referred to as the lazy incident.
Yeah, I loved this part. It is so relatable, yet his reaction is just so extreme.
Right. So one day in the 1920s, EJ comes home after a long day of lawyering and track management, and he finds his son, Butch, sprawling on the couch. Now, Butch is reading books, which you would think a lawyer dad would appreciate. But he's also just stuffing his face with banana layer cake and donuts.
I mean, to be fair, reading books and eating donuts sounds like a pretty ideal Saturday to me.
Oh, to you or me, sure. But to a driven man like EJ, a guy who is clawing his way up the ladder of wealth and power, this looked like the end of the world. He saw it as a massive sign of weakness, laziness. He looked at his son and thought, he's getting soft.
So what does he do? Does he ground him, take away the banana cake?
He goes nuclear. He decided right then and there that he wasn't having it. He immediately enrolled Butch in the Western Military Academy in Alton, Illinois.
Just because he was eating donuts on the couch.
Because he was too comfortable. EJ wanted to toughen him up. And ironically, that military school is where Butch started to develop the intense discipline that would define him later in the Navy. It wasn't really a punishment in EJ's eyes. It was a necessary course correction.
There is another connection here between father and son that I think is vital for you to know, because the airport isn't named O'Hare just because the dad was a wealthy lawyer. It is because the son was an incredible pilot. But that obsession with flying, that started with the dad.
It did. EJ was completely fascinated by aviation. You have to remember, this is the golden age of flight. Lindbergh, the whole world was looking up at the sky. And EJ actually hitched a ride in a mail plane with Charles Lindbergh at one point.
That is a serious claim to fame, flying shotgun with Charles Lindbergh.
And he didn't just ride along. He even took a job for a while as the lead pilot for an airmail route operated by Robertson Aircraft Company.
Wait, pause. So he is a lawyer, he runs multiple dog tracks, he has a private skating rink in his house, and he is flying commercial airmail on the side.
He was a man of many, many talents. And he made sure Butch had those talents too. He got Butch flying lessons long before most kids would ever be near an airplane. He gave him a .22 rifle to practice shooting at floating cans in the river to improve his marksmanship. He was essentially engineering a hero. He was building the exact skill set that Butch would later use to earn the Medal of Honor.
It is almost like he was preparing him for a war he didn't even know was coming. But while he is building this perfect, disciplined son, his own life starts to pivot into the shadows because in 1927, everything changes. He divorces his wife, Selma, and moves to Chicago full-time.
And this is where the Easy Eddie persona really takes over. When he gets to Chicago, the greyhound business naturally brings him into orbit with the people who control gambling in the city.
Really?
And in late 1920s Chicago, that means one person, Al Capone.
The Chicago outfit.
Correct. The outfit ran everything, the rackets, the bootlegging, the gambling. O'Hare and Capone start collaborating. It wasn't just that O'Hare was his lawyer. They became actual business partners.
So this is his second fortune. First the mechanical rabbit, now the mob.
Exactly. And this is where he earns the nickname Easy Eddie. He was slick, he was highly effective, and he made legal problems simply go away for the mob. He knew the law better than the cops did. But I want to pause on his personal life here for a second, because there is this wild contradiction that I think really explains who he was.
Oh, you're talking about the engagement.
Yes. So in Chicago, he gets engaged to a woman named Ursula Sue Granada. She is a secretary, but she is connected. Her brother was a mob-affiliated Illinois state representative, so he is dating directly into the life, too. But the engagement lasted for 7 years.
7 years. He is a wealthy mob lawyer. He can do whatever he wants. Why would he wait 7 years?
Religion. O'Hare was a devout Catholic.
Hold on. Let me get this straight. He is actively working with Al Capone. He is arguably helping to cover up murders, extortion, racketeering. But he is worried about church doctrine regarding marriage.
People are complicated, and O'Hare was more complicated than most. The Catholic Church wouldn't recognize his divorce from Selma, So he was actually waiting, hoping for a special dispensation from the Vatican so he could marry Ursula legitimately in the church.
That is quite the mental compartmentalization. I can launder money for a ruthless crime boss, but I cannot get married without the Pope's permission.
It creates a fascinating psychological profile. He had these strict moral codes in some areas, like parenting and religious marriage, and complete total flexibility in others, like organized crime. But eventually, those compartments collide. You can't keep them separate forever.
Which brings us to the pivot, the moment the movie would be based on. In 1930, Easy Eddie decides to turn on Al Capone.
It is a massive decision. You have to understand the stakes here. You don't just quit the Chicago outfit, and you certainly don't become an informant against them.
Do the sources tell us why? Was it a sudden crisis of conscience? Was he trying to protect Butch's future?
The sources don't give us a diary entry where he spills his soul, unfortunately. But we can strongly infer that he wanted to clean up his legacy, perhaps specifically for his son. He realized he couldn't be the father of a distinguished military man if he was the lawyer for a villain. But he didn't just walk into a police station. He was smart about it. He reached out to a reporter, John Rogers from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, to set up a secret meeting with the IRS.
The IRS, because that was the ultimate strategy, right? Capone was too slippery for murder or bootlegging charges, so they were going after his money.
Precisely. Tax evasion. Rogers set up a meeting between O'Hare and IRS agent Frank J. Wilson. And once O'Hare was on board, he didn't hold back at all. Agent Wilson later said, and I quote from the source, "On the inside of the gang, I had one of the best undercover men I have ever known, Eddie O'Hare."
That is incredible praise coming from the people whose job it was to put you in jail. But what was he actually doing? Was he wearing a wire? Did they even have wires back then?
Not a wire. He was providing something much deadlier to an accountant context. He showed the feds exactly where the bodies were buried, financially speaking. First, he directed Agent Wilson to the specific bookkeeper, who ultimately became the key witness at the trial. And more importantly, he helped the feds break the outfit's codes.
The codes?
Yes. Capone's bookkeepers used coded entries in the ledgers to hide where the money was actually coming from. To an outsider, even a highly trained federal accountant, it just looked like gibberish. O'Hare translated for them. He showed them the money trail. He would point and say, "This entry here, that's gambling income. This entry here, that's bootlegging."
So he is literally the decoder ring for the federal prosecution.
Yes, but his absolute biggest contribution was even more dramatic. It plays out exactly like a scene from The Untouchables.
Oh, wait. Is this the jury tampering incident?
It is. And actually, if you have seen the 1987 movie The Untouchables, this specific scene is in there, though they shuffled the characters around a bit for Hollywood.
So set the scene for us. This is the trial of the century.
It's October 1931. The trial is just about to start. Al Capone is sitting in the courtroom, and he is smiling. He is completely relaxed. He is cracking jokes with his defense lawyers. He is confident. Why? Because he knows the fix is already in. He has successfully paid off or threatened the entire jury pool. He knows for a fact he is walking free.
And O'Hare knows this too.
O'Hare finds out about the bribe, and he immediately tips off the government. He gets the word to the judge, James Wilkerson. So just before the trial officially begins, Judge Wilkerson walks into the courtroom. He looks at the jury box, then he looks at the bailiff. And he does something totally unprecedented. He orders the bailiff to switch the entire jury panel with another panel from a completely different federal trial that was happening right down the hall.
I would pay very good money to have seen Capone's face in that exact moment.
He must have been completely stunned. The color probably drained right out of him. He went from a guaranteed acquittal to suddenly facing a jury of total strangers he hadn't bribed and didn't know. And that was the nail in the coffin. Capone was found guilty and sent to federal prison.
And Easy Eddie was the secret architect of that surprise. He effectively ended the reign of the biggest gangster in the world.
He did. But there is a very strict rule in that world. Snitches get stitches. Or in this case, much worse.
Right. You don't betray the Chicago outfit and just retire to a beach in Florida?
No, you do not.
So let's fast forward a bit. Capone goes away to Alcatraz. O'Hare keeps living his life, probably looking over his shoulder, maybe hoping enough time has passed that they forgot. But then we get to 1939.
The timing here is incredibly suspicious. It is November 8th, 1939. Al Capone is scheduled to be released from Alcatraz in exactly 1 week.
1 week, so the boss is finally coming home.
Exactly. The timing sends a very clear message. O'Hare is 46 years old at this point. He leaves his office at Sportsman's Park Racetrack in Cicero, Illinois. He gets into his car, which is a 1939 Lincoln Zephyr coupe, a beautiful, fast car.
And he is driving down the street.
He approaches the intersection of Ogden Avenue and Rockwell Street in Chicago. Suddenly, a dark sedan pulls up right alongside him. And this isn't a friendly roll down the window and chat situation.
I am guessing not.
There were two gunmen in the dark sedan. They were wielding shotguns. And they didn't just fire regular buckshot, they fired a volley of what the source material specifically calls big game slugs directly into the Lincoln.
Big game slugs, like ammunition meant for hunting bears.
Yes, they were not taking any chances whatsoever. They wanted to completely shred that car. O'Hare died instantly. His car crashed into a roadside post. The killers just kept driving eastbound on Ogden Avenue and disappeared into the Chicago traffic.
That is just brutal. It is a calculated execution.
It was a message. It was the mob loudly saying, "We don't forget."
And there is a detail in the police report that really gives me chills when I think about it. When the police investigated the crash site, they found something in O'Hare's pocket.
They did. He was carrying a Spanish-made .32 caliber semi-automatic pistol, and it was freshly cleaned and oiled.
Was that normal for him? Was he a guy who was always packing heat?
No, the sources say it was highly unusual for him to carry a weapon like that. It strongly suggests he knew. He felt the walls closing in. Maybe he knew that with Capone getting out in a week, the loose ends were finally being tied up.
Did he ever get to use it?
No. He never even had a chance to draw it. The shotguns were too fast.
And did they ever catch the guys who did it?
No arrests were ever made. It remains an unsolved murder in Chicago, although everyone historically knows it was the outfit. It's one of those open secrets of history.
It is such a tragic end. He helps put away the bad guy, and a week before the bad guy gets out, he is erased.
And yet his legacy is so much bigger than just that murder. And this brings us right back to where we started today, the airport.
Right, because while O'Hare is dying in a Lincoln Zephyr in Chicago in 1939, what is Butch doing?
Butch is using the skills his father paid for and pushed him to learn. He is in the Navy. And just a few years later, in 1942, Butch O'Hare becomes a national icon. He single-handedly defends his aircraft carrier, the USS Lexington, against a wave of Japanese bombers. He shoots down 5 enemy planes in a single flight.
Earning the Medal of Honor.
And eventually, having the massive international airport named after him. But you can't really separate the two men. The father's dirty money, the father's obsession with aviation, the father's strict discipline that forced Butch into military school, all of that paved the way for the son's heroism.
It is almost biblical when you think about it. The father sins so the son can be a saint.
That is a very poetic way to put it. It is like the father walked through the mud so the son could fly. Without the greyhound tracks, without the mob connections, maybe Butch never gets those expensive flying lessons. Maybe he is just a guy reading books and eating donuts on a couch in St. Louis.
That is a wild thought. And pop culture hasn't entirely forgotten Easy Eddie either, right?
No, it hasn't. If you watch Boardwalk Empire on HBO, there's a character named Mike D'Angelo in the final season. That character is heavily based on O'Hare. They show him as an undercover agent, helping to get Capone on tax evasion.
And I saw a really weird reference in the notes. He is mentioned in a book about giant sharks.
Yes, Meg, a novel of deep terror. Apparently, there's a chapter called Payback that recounts the story of Easy Eddie and his son. It is a very odd place to find a historical mob anecdote in a sci-fi book about a prehistoric shark, but it just shows how compelling the story is. It sticks with people.
And the case isn't entirely dead, history-wise. Even recently, people have been poking around.
True. As recently as 2010, a Chicago alderman named Ed Burke actually asked the police to re-examine the murder. There was a book published called Get Capone that made some new allegations, and they wanted the cold case squad to take another look. It doesn't look like it led to a definitive conclusion or any arrests, obviously, but people are still asking questions about who specifically pulled the trigger that day.
So when we step back and look at the whole picture, what do we make of Edward J. O'Hare? Is he a villain? Is he a hero?
I think the best word is duality. He was a man who operated illegal dog tracks. He served the mob. He was completely comfortable with corruption. But he was also a man who deeply valued discipline, who clearly loved his son, and who ultimately risked and lost his life to assist the federal government.
He is a reminder that history isn't usually black and white. It is mostly gray.
Exactly. He did terrible things, and he did one massive good thing. And he probably did them both for the exact same reason, to provide for and protect his family.
It leaves you with a really haunting question, doesn't it? When O'Hare put that cleaned, oiled .32 pistol in his pocket that morning in November 1939, do you think he knew his time had run out? And more importantly, do you think he felt that his contribution to jailing Capone balanced the scales of his life?
That is the ultimate question. We will never know what he was thinking in those final moments, but we certainly know what he left behind.
So the next time you are sprinting through a terminal at O or D, maybe take a second, look at the name on the wall, and think about Easy Eddie, the man who bet on greyhounds, flew with Lindbergh, and took down Al Capone.
A truly fascinating slice of history hidden right behind an airport code.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.